In January of 2019, my husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor. It was in a completely inoperable part of the brain and was told me had 6 months to live. He stuck it out and died in October, 3 months longer than he was expected to. He was always positive and decided a few weeks after his diagnosis that he would write letters for our daughters for significant events in their lives. My husband was my soulmate, and the past few months have been difficult knowing I've lost him. We have 2 daughters, Mia, who is 21, and Imogen, Emmy, who is 19. All 3 of us have become a lot closer since their dad's death, and we've all really struggled. My husband and I were together since we were children, got married when we were 18, and we were approaching our 20th wedding anniversary when he passed. In February of this year, Mia got married to a boy she's been with for about 6 years. I absolutely love her husband, and he's been incredibly supportive during all of our grief. My husband wrote a letter for Mia to open on her wedding day. It's worth noting that my daughters were unaware of these letters. It was my job to give them to our daughters. Her wedding day comes around, and I just can't bring myself to give her the letter. I read it and just wanted to keep it to myself. I had his handwriting and his words, and it felt like he was there, and I couldn't bear the thought of giving that up yet. I was fully intending on giving her all the other letters as the events happened. Last week, Mia and her husband bought their first home together. They'd been living at our home since they got married, and so had a lot of stuff to pack and move to their new house. Mia asked me where her important documents were, passport, birth certificate, etc., so I told her they were in my top drawer of my dresser in my bedroom. The only letter that was in there was the one I was meant to give her on her wedding day, the rest were hidden away. She immediately recognized his handwriting, and of course it was addressed to her, so she read it and broke down. She came and found me and started screaming at me, asking how I could be so selfish. I didn't really know what to say apart from the fact that I wanted to keep it and she could take a picture of it. Both my daughters called me an idiot and are convinced I'm keeping them from a load of their dad's stuff. Am I the idiot? You're the idiot, and she's right, you're selfish and a thief. That wasn't yours to keep. My dad died when I was 17. Do you have any idea how hard it is to marry a man my dad never got to meet? To walk down the aisle without him? My wedding day was supposed to be one of my best memories, and instead it was just so hard. A letter would have meant the world to me. What you did was rotten. And the fact that you still haven't realized it speaks volumes. This wasn't only your loss. Do you not realize that? You are definitely a big-time idiot. Your husband wrote the letter to his daughter, and you tried to steal it from her because you wanted it. It was a private communication between father and son-child. You never should have opened it, let alone kept it from her. Then when she found out what you did, you offered to let her take a picture of her letter. Your only role was to be your husband's postman, and you couldn't handle that. You have to be the center of his life even in death and make his letter to her all about you. You are not just an idiot but a self-centered, narcissistic mother. I don't blame your daughters for wondering what else you've stolen from them. Yes. He wrote those on his deathbed and entrusted you with them to give to his daughters, thinking that you would carry out his wishes. They were meant for them, not you. You can take the pictures and they get the original. She lost her father and didn't have him with her on a very significant day, and instead of giving him a piece that he left behind, you're keeping it for yourself and saying that she can only have a picture. Those letters aren't about you. They're about his relationship with his daughters. Give them the letters, and if they are alright with it, take pictures of it. My partner and I have been discussing having children within the next couple of years. Unfortunately, my partner has rather severe dyslexia and dysgraphia. For those who do not know, those are reading and writing disorders. When reading, the letters float around and become jumbled together. When writing, spelling accurately is near impossible. These disorders impact his day-to-day life significantly. He cannot read more than a couple of sentences easily. It is to the point that I have to clarify menu items at restaurants or read the movie descriptions on Netflix to him. At work, he uses text-to-speech and speech-to-text software. He has said in the past that his dyslexia and dysgraphia made his childhood very difficult. He absolutely hated school and struggled with depression. Since dyslexia is genetic, he decided as a teenager that he would never have kids so that they would not have to endure the struggles that he faced. Fast forward a decade, and my partner has met me and changed his mind about wanting kids. The chances of passing on his dyslexia to a child is about 40–60%. He says that he is comfortable with that now because I am a teacher. He was always afraid that he would not be able to help his child with homework, but with a teacher for a partner, that is no longer a problem. Research also indicates that dyslexia and dysgraphia may lessen in severity with early reading interventions that he feels I can do for the child. The thing is, I am a high school math teacher and I feel overwhelmed when I think about the idea of raising a small child with dyslexia that severe. I am not trained for early childhood education or even specially trained in reading disorders of that severity. The idea of teaching all day and then coming home to being the sole person responsible for assisting with homework makes me feel overwhelmed, too. I have proposed the idea of adoption or sperm donation. My partner is not on board with either option. Adoption is a broken system in my country. Public adoption takes on average 8 years and private adoption $30K plus. Additionally, an adopted child could have more severe issues than dyslexia. My partner is uncomfortable with the unevenness of sperm donation because the child would be biologically mine, but not biologically his. He does not think dyslexia is that severe of a disorder to warrant sperm donation because it is not life-threatening. So, of course, I would love a child of mine no matter what issues they ended up facing. But am I the idiot for wanting to deliberately avoid having a child I know may have reading and writing disorders? Not the idiot, by a narrow margin over no idiots here. I think your partner is totally within his rights to want a biological child, but he is not right to want to commit such a large amount of effort solely from you to raise your child if they end up having issues with learning. You need to think long and hard about whether or not this is an incompatibility that you can overcome. Having a child with a significant chance of disability when you don't feel up to the challenge sounds like a recipe for resentment at best. If you have such strong doubts now, then you really need to think before an actual child is involved. Your partner deciding it will be okay because you can do these difficult tasks they were afraid of is not such a good reason that it all wipes out the negatives they themselves have experienced. You needing to get more training to do this, plus if there is no suggestion of other helpy tutors, cleaner to minimize other chores, that's all legitimate concerns that a partnership should be considering. You don't want to end up resenting your partner's limitations and then bring past along to your kids. You two need to speak with a counselor so that both sides can be heard and feel they are not being negated in this. It's not wrong to hope your kids won't have lifelong hurdles. Not the idiot. The mother often takes on the majority of the mental load around the household, despite the equality of the relationship set out beforehand. I am obviously against this dynamic, but it is true. Having a child, knowing that their potential dyslexia will cause you frustration and anger, and being unhappy to deal with it, could be a major source of tension. You would love the child, but I think having this unresolved tension doesn't help matters. It could also fuel resentment towards the child, never good for their upbringing. When my son was 6 months old, his father was sent to prison for 17 years. I knew there would be questions as my son got older, and I was so concerned that at that young age he wouldn't be able to understand that his father did a bad thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's an all-around bad guy, or that my son had any reason to feel badly or afraid about what had happened. It's just not possible for a young kid to fully understand what prison is or the reality of being in prison, and I didn't want him growing up ashamed of his father, or worse, afraid for him or worried about what was happening to him, worried I'd go to prison, or anything like that. I decided I would tell my son his dad was working in a foreign country without internet or phone. That way he wouldn't be falsely put through the grief of thinking his dad was dead or that he didn't have a father at all. We could look at pictures, I could read the letters when they came, he could send letters back. Questions came up over the years, but I answered them. What country? I don't know. He can't tell me because some of the work is confidential. Why can't he come visit for the holidays? They don't celebrate our holidays in that country, so his off time never coordinates with ours. Why can't we go visit him? It's too far and too expensive. I figured then at the end of the 17 years, when he was older and could understand prison and crime, and his dad was getting out, I could tell him about his dad and what he'd done, and it could be his decision whether he wanted to reach out or not because he'd be nearly 18. Well, surprise. My son is 15, his dad was paroled early, and he showed up at our house. My son is furious. But not for the reason I expected. I knew I'd take some heat for lying to him and thought it was one of those at first he'll be disillusioned, but when he's older he'll thank me. situations. But he said, "You let me go all these years thinking my dad was out there choosing a job over me. You let me think he was a deadbeat and that he didn't want me. He didn't have a choice. He was in prison. I hadn't considered that. I took for granted that as an adult I kind of shrug off you've gotta work when and where there's work is a sad but unfortunate reality. I never fully realized how it could sound to him that he was a second priority. Was I protecting him by not telling him straight away that his father was in prison, or am I the idiot? You're the idiot. It's your job as a parent to ease reality for your child, not completely hide it. You thought the general idea of how prison is bad would override your ability to explain the situation and help him cope with it in a productive way. Likely not true. In this situation, it was quite literally your responsibility to guide him through it. You could have easily explained to him much sooner how things were, and the reception would have likely been fine. Apologize, explain your thought process, and acknowledge that you didn't make the best decision. Then give him some time to come to terms with everything, and hopefully it all turns out okay. 15 years, and you never considered the situation from that angle. That was literally my first concern, and I know barely anything about the whole thing. You should have sat him down at 7 or 8 and explained in a kid-friendly way, when grown-ups do bad things they go to grown-up timeouts etc. Hell, there are whole books of advice about what to do when parents go to prison. You made a terrible decision, and you have only yourself to blame if your kid hates you. I get why you wouldn't want to tell him when he is a small kid, but I mean at some point you should have been honest. Your well crap happens attitude in that post is worrisome. What you have done will always be a divide from this day forward. Did his father never send letters or call? Or did you keep all of this from him too? Good luck ever getting him to trust you again. Context. Fiancé and I are getting married in September, COVID willing. My fiancé has wanted and dreamed of a wedding since she was a child. She has opinions on nearly every aspect, while I am indifferent to everything but the food. Both single moms are helping fund our wedding with $5,000. My fiancé's mom has been understanding of what my fiancé's desires are and knows when to push her ideas and when to back off. My mom, not so much. Instead, she has explicitly told us that she feels entitled to have her way on some aspects because she's helping pay. My fiancé and I both think this is ridiculous. So all this started with my mom being given the responsibility of preparing all the food for the wedding and having it serviced. With this, she arrived at the theme of BBQ. She informs my fiancé and I of her intention of having 4-5 proteins and 3-4 sides. 2 of the proteins would be hot dogs and hamburgers. Not going into the logistical concerns we all had of trying to serve such topping-heavy foods during a pandemic, my fiancé was adamant to the idea. My mom kept insisting that she had talked to my extended family and they all agreed on this and it would be classy in her mind. At one point, my fiancé and mom had a one-to-one conversation about this, where my fiancé attempted to stand up for her decision, only to have my mom insist this what everyone wanted. This really irked her, and she decided to write a letter. In it, she described the frustration of trying to get through to my mom and how she feels that the final decision should be left to her. With that, she told my mom to scrap any idea of hot dogs and hamburgers, as well as gave her some family recipes she'd like as some of the sides. I read it, gave it my stamp of approval, and she sent it. It was 2 days before we heard a response. When my mom did, she wrote me a check for the $5,000 and said she didn't want to be involved in any more planning as my fiancé didn't want opinions but reassurance. She said she couldn't have her name behind an event as a host if it wasn't going to be classy. She then went on to say she felt betrayed as my fiancé was not addressing these issues as they occurred. She then tried say that she's concerned with the state of my relationship and where it will go if I let my wife control me like this. I tried expressing that if I have no opinion on the wedding and my fiancé does, then I want her to have the wedding she always planned. I haven't spoken to her very much since then. I'm honestly still very hurt by the way she tried to describe my relationship when she's been much more of a controlling person than my fiancé ever has. But I still want to know, am I the idiot? Not the idiot. This is you and your fiancé's wedding. This special day is for the both of you, not for your mom. She can give opinions and suggestions. But in the end it's up to you and your fiancé. If she wants to heal you more financially by giving you 5k, she should do it because she loves you and not so she can make the wedding how she wants it to be. Not the idiot. Sadly, we had a similar situation and it led to a major rift. Your mom is testing boundaries big time here and you did yourself and fiancé a major solid by firmly setting them. I have the feeling that your mom is setting up for many issues that she feels exist because your fiancé dare have a large role in your relationship and marriage. The problem may never resolve, it didn't in my case unfortunately. Good luck. You should really be running point with your mom instead of leaving it up to your fiancé. And don't give mom any room to wiggle in between you. Make it clear that you're not doing what your fiancé wants, but what you both want. You're not passively going along with her wishes, you're actively working toward them together because you support one another. You're a united front. My ex-wife cheated on me, we were married for 8 years. She wanted to work on it, and I wanted to be done with it. She kept getting her family members to contact me and mutual friends to try and work things out. I couldn't though, that was the one thing I said I would never take a partner back for. A month ago I was involved in a car accident, I'm fine, everyone's fine and nobody suffered anything fatal fortunately. I had cuts and bruises along with broken ribs, being the most severe. Well, she had gotten wind of this because of a post on Facebook and came to visit me at the hospital. My mom said yeah without asking me. So, she came when a few of my family members were there. She was the last person I wanted to see, 1 year since divorce. I became angry, telling her I thought I told her I never wanted to see her again and leave, because if this had happened to her I told her I would be nowhere to be found. She was visibly distraught, leaving me a gift, a letter, and flowers as a result, and just walking out after only being in there for a few minutes. Everyone knew she was coming except me, I guess. My mom told me that wasn't nice at all, and I should reconsider how I treat her, even though we're not together anymore. I said I didn't care and that I hated her. To this day I haven't read her letter, and part of me wants to throw it out without reading it. But I did tell her I never wanted to see her again prior to this. I think she was selfish to not listen and to come and see me. My mom wants me to apologize to her and says I was rude and nasty. Not the idiot. Burn the letter and put the flowers in the closest garbage disposal. Then put mayonnaise in your mom's coffee for saying yes without asking you. You have made it very clear several times you are done, and if she can't handle not being around you, maybe she shouldn't have cheated on you. Stay strong, dude. It's bad when your family is against you, even when you are in the right. It was selfish and inconsiderate of her to attempt a peace offering while you were in the hospital, and your family were manipulative and deceitful. FYI, if you ever, God forbid, get hospitalized again, you can request a lockdown on info to be released. I'd seriously explain to your family that you do not wish for any contact with the ex, and reconciliation is never in the cards. I'd also tell them in the future you will be very stingy with personal medical info because of this stunt. Not the idiot. You were in shock and a lot of pain, and in walks the person who betrayed you then harassed you, and whom you had already told to stay away from you. Yeah. You get to tell them to get the hell out, and personally I'd tell mom to get the hell out for a while, too. She had no right okaying anyone to come to your hospital room without your knowledge or consent.